I never thought the word over could break me the way it did that night. One second, I was standing in my own living room, staring at the woman I'd promised forever to, and the next, those two little words shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. We're over. Her voice was cold, almost rehearsed, like she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to drop it on me. And maybe that's what hurt the most. She didn't even flinch. No tears. No hesitation. Just finality. You know, people always talk about how relationships end with big fights, screaming matches, slammed doors, plates shattering against walls. But this wasn't loud. It was quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm before a storm. I stood there frozen, trying to piece together what she meant. Was this a fight? A bluff? Or was she really walking away from everything we'd built together? The house we'd poured our savings into, the plans we'd made, the future I thought we both wanted. I wanted to ask her why. I wanted to demand answers. But my throat was dry, my chest tight, and the only thing that came out was silence. And that's when I noticed something strange. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. At the doorway. I turned my head, half expecting to see nobody there, but that's when I saw her. Her sister. Now, let me pause for a second. Her sister and I, we were never close. Sure, we were polite around each other, shared a few laughs at family gatherings, but there was always this tension in the air. Like she knew something I didn't. Like she was keeping some secret tucked away behind her smile. That night, though, her expression was different. Not smug. Not distant. Almost calculated. I didn't know it then, but what she said next would change everything. Because while my wife's words cut like a knife, her sister's words lit a fire I wasn't prepared for. It was almost as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment, standing in the shadows, listening, biding her time. And as the silence stretched between us, she finally stepped forward, her eyes locking on mine in a way that made my stomach twist. My wife had just ended our marriage with 2 words. But her sister? She was about to start something I couldn't even begin to understand. And when she finally opened her mouth, what came out didn't just shock me. It pulled me into a story I never imagined I'd be part of. Because while one woman had just walked away, the other leaned in closer and whispered words I'll never forget. We're just beginning. You might be wondering how we even got here. Because trust me, I've been asking myself the same thing every single day since that night. When I first met my wife, I thought she was the kind of person you only read about in novels. She had this energy about her, warm, steady, the type that made you believe in forever. We met in the most ordinary way, at a coffee shop where I accidentally spilled my drink and she laughed instead of getting mad. That laugh, it hooked me. From then on, it was like the universe had drawn us into each other's orbit. Her sister, though, she was different. If my wife was sunlight, her sister was fire. Bold, unpredictable, sharp with her words, but magnetic in her own way. The two of them couldn't have been more opposite, and yet somehow, they balanced each other out. At least, that's what I thought. From the very beginning, I knew her sister didn't like me much. She never said it outright, but it was in the way she'd watch me when she thought no one was looking. Like she was measuring me, waiting for me to fail. At family dinners, she'd throw little jabs disguised as jokes, and I'd just laugh them off, because what else could I do? I was marrying her sister, not her. Still, there was something about the way she lingered. The way her presence always seemed heavier than it should have been. I brushed it off, convinced I was overthinking. For years, life was good. My wife and I built routines, shared dreams, and even when things got tough, bills piling up, work stress, it always felt like we were on the same team. That's why her sudden words, "We're over," hit me like a train. There had been no huge fights, no clear warning signs. Just a slow, quiet distance I hadn't noticed until it was too late. But here's the part that haunts me. Her sister. She was always around, more than you'd expect. Helping with little things, stopping by unannounced, offering support that felt just a little too convenient. At the time, I thought she was just being a good sibling, stepping in when she saw cracks forming. But looking back now, I can't help but wonder, was she really helping, or was she waiting? Because the moment my wife let go of me, her sister stepped in. No hesitation, no confusion, just this eerie certainty, like she'd been planning it all along. And that's what keeps me up at night. How long had she been watching us? How long had she been waiting for my wife to say those words? The truth is, maybe the story of how my marriage ended isn't really about my wife at all. Maybe it's about the shadow that had been standing beside us the whole time. And if that's the case, then what she whispered that night wasn't the beginning of something new. It was the beginning of something dangerous. After that night, nothing felt real anymore. My wife's words kept echoing in my head. We're over. But almost louder than that were her sister's, like a shadow whispering in the back of my mind. We're just beginning. I couldn't wrap my head around it. What did she mean by that? Beginning what? Was it some cruel joke, her way of kicking me while I was already down? Or was it something else? The days that followed were a blur. My wife packed her things faster than I thought possible. She didn't fight me over furniture, photos, or even the house. We'd spent years making it a home, and she walked away like it meant nothing. That coldness cut deeper than any argument could have. But her sister? She didn't vanish. If anything, she was closer. Every time I turned around, she was there, calling to check in, showing up with excuses. You shouldn't be alone. I just wanted to make sure you're eating. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part couldn't. Because in her eyes, I saw something I couldn't explain. Something between pity and possession. I asked her once, point blank, what she'd meant that night. She just smiled. This half smirk that told me she knew more than she was letting on. You'll understand soon, she said, like it was only a matter of time. That should have scared me more than it did. The strangest part was, she wasn't angry at her sister. No, it was the opposite. It was like she was glad my wife had left me. Like she'd been waiting for that door to close so she could step through it herself. And maybe I'm crazy, but sometimes I caught her looking at me the way people look at something they've wanted for a long time. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it, if grief was twisting my thoughts, or if I was finally seeing what had been there all along. But one night, I got my answer. Because she showed up again, uninvited, with that same look in her eyes, and this time, she didn't just whisper. She crossed the line. The night she crossed the line is etched in my memory like a scar. I had just come home from work, the house still feeling like a shell without my wife in it. Every corner reminded me of her. Her favorite blanket draped on the couch, the half-empty mug she'd left in the cupboard, even the faint trace of her perfume still clinging to the hallway. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. Darkness felt safer than facing all that emptiness. And then, I heard it. A knock. Slow. Measured. Not the kind of knock you ignore. I opened the door, and there she was, my wife's sister. Standing there like she belonged, like it was the most natural thing in the world. No explanation, no hesitation. Just her. She slipped inside, without waiting for me to invite her. That alone should have made me uneasy, but I was too drained to fight. She carried a small bag, like she'd planned to stay a while. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. Finally, I asked her again. The same question that had been clawing at me since that night. What did you mean? We're just beginning. Her eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, like she was studying how much of the truth I could handle. And then she leaned in, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. I meant exactly what I said. You and her. That chapter's finished. But you and me? We're only at the start. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her she was insane, that this was wrong, that it was twisted, but the words caught in my throat. Because the way she said it, with so much certainty, made me second-guess myself. She stood up, pacing slowly across the room, her fingertips brushing against the walls like she was claiming the space as her own. Don't you see? She whispered. She never understood you. But I do. I always have. Those words sank into me like poison. I should have pushed her away, should have made it clear that none of this was okay. But instead, I froze. Because buried underneath all the confusion and anger was a tiny spark of fear. Fear that maybe she wasn't lying. Her presence was suffocating. She moved closer, her hand almost brushing mine, her eyes burning with something I couldn't name. It wasn't love, it was possession. I told myself to leave, to end it, to walk away right there. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I needed to know the truth. I needed to know what she really wanted, and why she'd been waiting in the shadows all this time. And then, just as I opened my mouth to demand answers, she leaned in so close I could feel her breath and whispered the one thing that made my blood run cold. But before I could respond, her whisper sliced through the silence. She didn't leave you for herself. I froze. The room spun, my breath catching in my throat. What was she talking about? She smiled then, slow and deliberate, as if she'd been waiting for me to ask. She left you for me. The words didn't make sense at first. My wife, leaving me for her own sister? No, that was impossible. My mind rejected it instantly. But the way she said it, with so much calm, so much certainty, sent a chill down my spine. She stepped even closer, her eyes locking onto mine, daring me to deny it. You think she walked away without a fight? You think she packed her things overnight because she stopped loving you? Her voice dropped to a near whisper. She walked away because she knew she'd already lost you to me. My heart pounded in my chest. Lost me? To her? I couldn't move, couldn't speak. And in that heavy silence, she leaned back, almost triumphant, and whispered again. She knew the truth before you did. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of my marriage. This was something much darker. The room felt like it was collapsing in on me. My wife's sister's words echoed like a siren in my skull. She knew the truth before you did. I snapped. Stop playing games. What truth? My voice cracked, a mix of anger and fear. Her expression didn't waver. If anything, she seemed almost relieved, like she'd been waiting years to let this spill. You think she left because she stopped loving you? No. She left because she couldn't stand watching what was happening between us. The words hit me like a punch. Between us? I wanted to deny it, to call her delusional, but flashes of the past came rushing back. Her lingering stares, the way she always found excuses to be around, the subtle tension I'd buried because it was easier to ignore. My wife had seen it, felt it, before I ever admitted it to myself. You don't get it, I said, shaking my head. There isn't an us. But she stepped closer, eyes glinting, her voice trembling now, not with fear, but with obsession. There always was. And now, nothing stands in our way. I pushed her back, my chest tight with rage. This isn't love, it's poison. For the first time, her smile faltered. Her voice cracked. Poison? No, it's fate. And then, just as the air thickened, just as I thought this was the breaking point, the front door opened. I spun around. It was her. My wife. She stepped inside slowly, her face pale, her eyes burning, not with sorrow, but with fury. She looked at me, then at her sister, and in that silence I realized she hadn't left for good. She hadn't disappeared into a new life. She'd been watching, waiting, and now she was back. But the twist wasn't just her return, it was the look in her eyes. A look that told me this story wasn't about to end in forgiveness or reunion. It was about to end in something none of us were ready for. When my wife stepped through that door, it felt like time froze. Her sister and I stood there, locked in this suffocating silence, waiting for her to speak. But she didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just looked at us. First at me, then at her sister, and shook her head slowly, like she was staring at the wreckage of something that had once been beautiful. I wanted to believe it wasn't true, she said softly, her voice breaking just enough to cut me deeper than any scream could. But I saw it in your eyes long before you did. I tried to speak, to tell her she was wrong, that nothing had happened, that I never crossed a line. But the words tangled in my throat. Because even if I hadn't acted on it, she was right. Somewhere in the shadows of my mind, I had noticed her sister. Not in the way she thought, but enough for it to plant a seed. And that seed had poisoned everything. Her sister tried to step forward, her tone desperate now. Don't you see? This was always meant to be. He belongs with me. But my wife cut her off with a single look. A look sharp enough to silence a storm. No, she said. He doesn't belong to you. He doesn't even belong to me anymore. He belongs to himself. And I'm done fighting for someone who never fought for me. The words stung like fire. I wanted to reach for her, to beg for another chance, to promise I could fix it. But the truth was, I couldn't erase what had been growing in the cracks between us. And she was strong enough to walk away from it. She turned to leave, her footsteps steady, and for the first time, I didn't chase her. Her sister stood there trembling, furious, and yet somehow defeated. She looked at me like I'd betrayed her too, like I'd taken everything from her without ever giving anything back. And in a way, maybe I had. When the door finally shut behind my wife, the house was heavier than ever. Her sister lingered for a moment, eyes filled with something between hate and heartbreak. Then she left too, without another word. And just like that, I was alone. That night, sitting in the quiet of an empty house, I realized the story hadn't been about choosing between them. It had been about something deeper, the danger of silence, of ignoring cracks until they split wide open. About how easy it is to lose everything when you don't speak, Don't notice, don't fight. In the end, there was no dramatic reconciliation, no sudden happy ending. Just lessons carved into scars. That love can't survive in shadows. And that sometimes, the hardest truth to face is the one inside yourself. And maybe that's the real ending. Not about who stayed or who left, but about learning to finally stand on my own.